Hello everyone, welcome to this video. I am Chidumen Namdi. Here we are going to learn everything about the art4 control flow syntax in Angular. So let's dive in straight in. Now this art4 control flow syntax is used to render a content in the DOM for each item in a collection. Now let's see how we can use this syntax. Here we have the fruits class field, which is an array that contains these items: apple, mango, and banana. Now let's see how we can use the art4 control flow syntax to render the items in this array. Now to begin, we'll first use the at symbol, then followed by for, then the parentheses open and close. Then here we will write the template variable to hold each item in this fruit. So now let's call it fruit. Then we'll write off and then followed by the fruits variable, then open brace and close brace. Now you see we have an error here. This is because we are not adding the track expression. Now the add for control flow syntax makes the track expression to be a must by default. So we must add it before we can use the add for. Now this track expression is used to add identity for each content rendered between these braces. So this enables Angular to track each item in the DOM via its identity, and then it will help it to know how to add elements, edit elements, remove elements properly without affecting performance. Now here we'll add the track keyword, then followed by the identity we want to track the DOM with. So in this case, we are just going to track it by the identity of each item in the array. So we'll just add fruit, because here the fruit template variable will still be visible here. So now in between these braces is where we'll now add the element we want to render for each items in this collection of fruits. So here let's just simply render a div element, then fruit, then we'll now render the fruit name. So we'll close the div. Now this fruit template variable is only visible inside this scope in this art4 syntax. We cannot use it outside here. It will not be visible. So you can see fruit does not exist in the type. So it's not visible. It's only visible within the scope of the art4 syntax. Now when we save this, so we'll see each item of the fruit displayed in the DOM. Now we can see that this art4 control flow syntax does the same thing the ngFor directive does as well. But the only difference is that this art4 control flow syntax is not a directive and it's built inside the Angular templating engine, whereas the ngFor is a directive and can be imported before use, and also it is not built inside the templating engine. For us to use the ngFor directive, we must import it from the angular/core module, then import it in the import array of our component before we can now use it in our template. Now let's replicate this using the ngFor. So we'll copy this, paste it here, then come here, asterisk ngFor, then we'll now write our expression fruit of fruits. Now for us to use this ngFor, now let's import it in our array. Say import ngFor. So it comes from the angular/core common module. So we'll save. So you see it renders the same thing as the art4 control flow syntax, but you see the art4 is neater than the ngFor because we don't have to import the directive and also add it to the imports array, and also use the string asterisk just for us to render an element in a collection. So the art4 control flow syntax does the same thing, and also it's very neat without any imports. And also you can see with this for control flow syntax, it resembles the traditional JavaScript for off statement. So we can see that this for control flow syntax resembles the for off statement in JavaScript. Now let's replicate this with the traditional for off statement in JavaScript. Now let's see something like this. Then we'll now write the for let fruit of fruits. So you see they have a striking resemblance. So you see the for here of, and off here. So you see, coming from JavaScript or any other programming language, it will be much easier to remember and write this at for control flow syntax rather than the ngFor. So you see, and also it's built in. You don't need any import for us to use it. And also with the for of, there's no import at all to use it. It's built inside the JavaScript engine. Now, let's say, for example, we have complex objects as items in our collection that we're iterating over using the at for control flow syntax, and it will be very complex to use the track here. Now, instead of using the item and also doing calculations, you can easily pass index here to use the each index of the iteration to track the content in the DOM here. But for now, let's use the foot. That's just a tooltip for the tool belt there. Now, let's look at how we can iterate over strings. Now, let's say this our fruit uh, is a string. Like for example, we just have apple, banana all mashed up together. Now, we can iterate over a string and it will display each character in the DOM. So now let's see it. First, let's remove this for now and then save. So you see it will iterate over each characters in the string and display all of them. So it will iterate over these characters and then display all of them, as we can see in the DOM: A, P, P, L, E, B, A, N, A. So now there might be a case in which we have an empty array. For example, we have this fruits array and it's empty, and using the for of we'll have nothing here. So this is a bad UI UX experience to the user. They might think something is missing here, or maybe something is wrong with the application. So for us to make this a very good UI UX experience for our user, so we need to display a content telling the users that the collection they are waiting to see is empty. So in this case, the fruits class field is empty. So instead of just leaving the DOM blank like that, we need to display something telling them that the fruits array is empty. So to do that, the at for control flow syntax comes also with a syntax which is called the at empty. The at empty is called when the collection iterated over using the at for control flow syntax is empty. So this empty syntax will be called, and whatever that is between the braces will be rendered instead. So in this case, you see how we use it. After the for closing brace, we will now use the at symbol, then followed by the empty keyword, then open brace and close brace. Then inside it is where we will now write out the DOM or the element that we will display when the fruits collection is empty. So in this case, we are displaying no fruits, and when we save, we will see no fruits in the DOM. Now we'll look at for control flow syntax with iterable objects. Now, since we know that the at for control flow syntax resembles the for of statement in JavaScript, now the at for control flow syntax only iterates over iterable objects. Now, iterable objects are objects in JavaScript that can be iterated over using the for of statement, and they have the iterator protocol defined inside them. Now, iterable objects are arrays like we have used here. So that was why we were able to iterate over these fruits and display its content. Then strings, that was why we were able to display the string apple banana in the DOM previously. Now another examples of iterable objects are sets, maps, typed arrays, argument objects, and also generator functions. Now let's look at sets. Now let's convert this fruit. No, we're not converting it. Let's just define a set here. Now to define a set, we use set. So now this is a set. To iterate over it, come here, set, then track. Let's call this item. So we'll call this item. Then we'll call this item. So as you can see, set is used to hold unique items in it. So can you use to hold unique items? So you see, it has the art4 has already iterated over all the items in it and displayed it in the DOM. So set is an iterable object, and that is where we're able to use the for of control flow syntax on it. Now another type of iterable object we are going to look at is the maps. Now, the map stores items in a key value pair. Just like we have in the object, the property and the value, the map store in a key value pair, the key against the value, just in a dictionary type of storage. Now, let's see how to define a map here. We'll come here, find a map, then we'll remove this, and then we'll pass first array and then the second array. So now this first array holds items. Now the items in this array are also arrays, like as we can see here. Now the first item in this array is the key, whereas the second item in the array is the value. So it stores in the key value pair. So in the second array we can see two bananas. So in this case, the key is the one is the key and this string apple is the value. In this second array, 2 is the key and banana is the value. In this third array, 3 is the key and cherry is the value. So we can iterate over them and display them in the DOM using the art4 control flow syntax. So to do that, let's set map here, and when we save, do we have a problem here? Okay, we have expression have changed. Okay, so to solve this, let's just add the change detection strategy here. Let's just make this on push just for this tutorial sake, so that we can see this rendering. So you see the map was successfully iterated over by the art4, and then we are able to render the key and the value conjoined together using the comma. Yes. So now let's look at the typed arrays. Int array u int 8. Let's use this u int 8 array. Then let's have 1 2, okay, 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. Then we'll copy these typed arrays. So you see, we're able to iterate over the items in the typed array and display it. So also we have argument object. Argument object is also an iterator or an iterable. Sorry, it's an iterable. So argument is an object found in functions or methods. So it holds in a index-based system all the arguments passed to a method or a function. Now let's see it here. Let's say we have this method get fruit here. Now inside this method lives the argument object. So it's an object and that stores all the arguments passed to the method or function in an index-based system. So it's an object, but it stores it in an index-based system. So let's see how we can use it. We can iterate over it using the art4 control flow syntax. Banana. I hope this is the spelling of banana. So what we'll do here, we will return the arguments and just make this just so we'll return this argument because it exists only inside of this method. So we will return it and pass it to this art4, and you will see it will iterate over it to display all the elements or the items in this fruits array, because we are going to pass the fruits array to this get fruits method when it's called. So we'll come here, call the get fruits, then pass the fruits array. So in this case, what we are getting here is this argument objects. So and it will contain this array. So we are going to now display them here. So now let's save, and you see we are able to display the items. Now let's look at how we can use the at4 control flow syntax with generator functions. Now generator functions in JavaScript allows us to define an iterator by using a special kind of function with the asterisk syntax. So they are used particularly to create iterators in a more concise and memory efficient way. Now let's convert this get fruits to a generator function. So we'll simply add this asterisk here, and then okay, since we are passing the fruits array to it, then it uses the yield keyword to return value. So if we have a first yield keyword like this, let me see, it yields zero, no, sorry, apple. Then here it yield banana. So when this function is called for the first time, it will return or yield apple. On the second call, it will return or yield banana. Then on the third or subsequent calls, it will yield undefined because that's the end of the yield keyword here. So this is how the generator function or generator method works. It uses the yield keyword to return instead of the traditional return method. But in this case, it returns a value once at a time it's called. So at the first call, it returns this apple. Second call, it returns this. Then on subsequent calls after the last call that used the banana, it will be returning undefined. So this generator functions also works with for of and also at for control flow syntax. So let's see it in action. So what will happen here is that it will display apple and banana in our DOM. So now let's save. So you see apple and banana. So this shows us that the generator function is an iterable and can also be iterated over using the at4 control flow syntax. Now also we can make this dynamic to yield all the items in this array, because this args array is getting the fruits member field from here. So let's add more items here. So now let's make this more dynamic. Instead of yielding just your apple and banana, it should yield all the items in this fruits array. So you see it here. It loops through the args and yields all items in it. So when this is called for in the first time, it will loop this over and yield the first element. Somehow it will stop here. On the next call, it will yield the second item in this args array till the last, and then it will exit. Now let's save. So you see it returns every item in the fruits array and it's displayed in the DOM. Now if we add more items in the fruits array, it will still be the same. Orange will appear here, still the same thing. Let me add pineapple. Pineapple will be displayed here. So you can see generator functions are iterables, and also it can be used with the at4 control flow syntax. In fact, for short, any iterable object that can be used with for of statement in JavaScript can be used with the this at4 control flow syntax in Angular. Now we're going to look at for control flow syntax with the object in JavaScript. Now let's see what happens when we use an object in the at4 control flow syntax. Let's say we have a user object here, a user object literal with the name John and age 25. Now let's plug it inside here, user. So we are trying to look through this object and see if the at4 control flow syntax can loop through the user object and display the properties here. Already we have an error here. So it says type error must have a symbol.iterator method that returns an iterator. So this tells us that an object is not an iterator in JavaScript. So we cannot iterate over an object using the for of and also using the at4 control flow syntax. But there is a way we can do it. Since this says that ngIt type this must have a symbol.iterator method, so that means that any object or any data that does not have this method is not an iterable. Now let's check it out. Let's open our dev tools. Now here we are looking to check if an object has the symbol.iterator. So it throws type error is not a function. So this tells us that an object literal or an object in JavaScript is not an iterable because we are trying to access the symbol.iterator and it threw error. So that tells us it's not an iterator. So now let's try for a string. You see it returns a string iterator, showing that yes, strings are iterable. Now let's try for array. So you see it returns array iterator. So an array is an iterable. Now let's try for set. So you see sets are iterable. Then for map, you see map are iterable. So you see the how we're able to identify when we use the symbol.iterator method call on an object, it threw an uncaught type error showing that an object is not an iterable. So we can use the power of monkey patching in JavaScript to make an object to become an iterable. Simply, this is what we will do. We will copy this, we will come to the object, then assign it a function to read. Then this makes the user an iterable. So inside here, you can see this is a generator function because a generator function is used to define an iterator. And this symbol.iterator method is what we are defining in this user object literal. So here we can yield different values. Let's yield John, then yield 25. So when we save, we will see that this at 4 will successfully loop through this user object and display John and 25 in the DOM. Now let's go. You see John and 25. So by doing this, we made this user object an iterable. So because if we check for this symbol.iterator, it will return true for this user. So this is an iterable now. And when we use the at4 control flow syntax on it, it called this symbol.iterator method, and in the first iteration it yielded John. That's why we saw John in the browser. Then on the second loop it used 25, and that's why we have 25. Then on the third call it used undefined. Then the at4 will exit iterating on this user because it has yielded undefined, and then it will stop. Now let's make this symbol.iterator to be dynamic so that it can yield all the values of the properties in this user object. So to do that, we need to remove this, and then okay, then grab the keys of this, then look through it using the for of. So use a key of keys, and then and then yield each key. No, not each key. We will now use this reference it using the bracket notation to grab the value and then yield it. We have an error here, it should be const. Sorry for the mistakes. And then we have errors here. It says a symbol.iterator implicitly has return type any. So we need to type this our symbol.iterator. First, let's go here, define our interface user, and then now here we have name, which is a string. Then we'll have age, which is a number, and then we'll have the symbol.iterator. Let me copy it from here, which is a function that returns a generator, which is a function that returns a generator function. So thank God for Copilot. String or number. Then we can add void a number. So we'll come here, we'll pass in this here, make it a user of the interface. Did you mean user? No, I meant, okay, sorry, there's a typo error here. Then I'll come here and assign this as key of user. So everything is okay now. Now we'll save. So you see it still renders everything. So now our symbol.iterator is non-dynamic, that returns all the values of the properties we have in this user. So we can add additional properties and value, and it will simply display it here without us writing it out here, yield. So let's add another property, status active. We'll save active comes here. So write another property bet. Now let's say 1995. It returns here and you see. So this is how we can make an object to become an iterator, or any data that is not an iterable to become an iterable, simply by defining the symbol.iterator method inside it and then passing your generator function, and inside it is where you now write the code and using the yield keyword to yield values to the for of or the at for that is iterating over your data. So the Angular has contextual variables that we can use with the at for control flow syntax. Let me remove this user. We are done with it. So we'll be using our fruits array for now. Now let's rename to fruits and let's remove this our interface and save. We have our fruits array back in the DOM. Now let's use this index contextual variable. Now this index contextual variable is used to get the index number of the current iteration we are in. So to define contextual variables in @for, we'll simply pass it along here inside the parentheses. So here we add a semicolon, then add index. Now this index is the template variable we'll assign the current index to. So now to get the index, we'll grab it off the contextual variable, and it is defined by using this dollar symbol, then followed by the index. So first we have to write the let keyword, template keyword, because it's only passable in the Angular templating engine. So that's why I call it the template keyword and the template variable, then the contextual variable. So this is only alive inside this @for scope within these braces. Now we can now use this index variable inside here. Now to do it, let's come here and say index and then display it here. Index. So on the first iteration, the index is 0. Second, it will be 1. On the third, it will be 2. So till the last item in the collection. So you see here, the apple is in index 0, banana in 1, lemon in 2, orange in 3, pineapple in 4. So you see the index contextual variable is just used to get the current index in the iteration. Now let's look at another contextual variables. It is the odd and even. Now this odd and even is used to get if the current iteration, its index is an odd number or an even number. So if the index is 0, that means it's an even number. But if it is 1, 3, 4, 3, 1, 3, 5, 7, and so on, then it's an odd number. Now to get it, we'll first add odd, use the odd index variable, then grab it and assign it to our template variable. Now let's call it odd. Then we can now use it here. So you see, for apple it's false. The odd is false because the index of apple is 0. So odd is false because 0 is not an odd number. Banana is 1. So that means the odd contextual variable will return true. So you can see the odd just holds a Boolean variable, true or false. So you can see it here, it holds a Boolean variable, true or false. Now let's add even. So we can add, just in JavaScript, we can add template variables, declare template variables in the same line. Okay, so this copilot, I think I have to remove it. Let me. So you see, we declared both the odd contextual variable and the even contextual variable in the same line. Just similar to what we have in JavaScript, we can declare variables in the same line. So we got the even contextual variable and assign it to this even variable. Sorry, from the even contextual variable and assign it to this even template variable. So the even contextual variable is a Boolean data that indicates if the current index of the current iteration is an even number. So if the current index is 0, it's an even number. So even will return true. If it is 1, it will even will be false because 1 is not an even number, and so on. So now let's display it here also. Let's say even, and then the template variable even, and then we'll save. So you see 0 for index 0 in apple, odd is false, even is true because 0 is an even number. For banana, the index is 1, so odd is true and even is false. For lemon, the index is 2, so odd is false and even is true because true is an even number. Then for orange, it is 3, so odd is true because 3 is an odd number and even is false because 3 is not an even number. Pineapple, we have the odd being false because the index is 4. So 4 is not an odd number, and even is true because 4 is an even number. So you see how we're able to get the contextual variables of even and odd. Now let's look at another contextual variable, which is the first and last. Now let's look at both. So still the same way that contextual variable. So for first, it is grabbed using this contextual variable, and for last, it is done using this. Now let me first set them up before we can uh, see what they do. Even here, let me write last here, last. So this first contextual variable is a Boolean data that indicates if the current iteration is the first. If it is the first, then it will return true. But if it's not the first in the iteration, it will return false. Then this last contextual variable is the inverse of first. It returns true if the current iteration is the last in the iteration in the collection, but will return false if it is not the last in the iteration. So now let's save and see. So in banana, we see the first as the value being true because the apple is the first iteration in the fruits collection. So the fruits will return true. Then last is false because apple is not the last in the iteration, it's actually the first. So the last will be false in each case. Then for banana is the second iteration. So first is false because banana is not the first iteration, while last is also false because it's not the last iteration. It still has elements down the line. Now in lemon, it's still the same thing. First false, last false, and same with orange, first false and last false. Then in pineapple, we have the first false, yes, because the pineapple is not the first iteration, it's the last iteration, and we have the last as true because pineapple is actually the last in the iteration because after the pineapple, there is no other elements in the fruits array. Now let's look at another contextual variable called the count. Let's clear this and write count. So it's grab using this variable $count. Then we'll set it in this template variable count. Now let me clear this up. Come here, then write count, remove this, then change this from first to count. Then we'll save. So this count variable is used to indicate the number of iterations in the collection. So in this case of fruits, it will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the art4 will go through 5 iterations in this fruits collection. So this count will have the value of 5. So the count variable is used to hold the number of iterations on a collection. So you see it will return count. It will return 5, which will have the count is 5. So this is actually very useful when we want to display the number of items we have in each iteration. So this contextual variable helps us to achieve that without actually using the dot length property to get the number of items in the collection or any other way in our iterable object. Now we have actually covered everything we need to know about the art4 control flow syntax. Now this art4 control flow syntax is only available in Angular version 17 upwards. Anything down, you will not see this art4 control flow syntax to use. But if you are using Angular versions lower than 17, you can actually migrate to use this control flow syntax we have in Angular 17. So it's very simple to use. To do it, you have to open up your CLI and run migrations using the ng Angular CLI. So now let me show you how it's done. Let me split my terminal, then carry it up, then open it more, then open this. Now to migrate your Angular project to use the at control flow syntax, you have to run these migrations in your terminal. So it's like this. You will type the ng, then followed by generate, then at Angular slash core colon, then you now write control flow. Now running this migration will migrate your project to include the control flow syntax we have the Angular 17. So you can use the art4 control flow without migrating to Angular 17. So this migration does it for us. So you can use all the control flow syntaxes we have in the Angular, the at switch, at for, at if, at defer, and at if. I think I've mentioned it. So this is what you would do to run your migrations to use the art4 control flow syntax. So I urge you to migrate or to upgrade your project to use this art4 because it's very neat and makes the syntax very neat and maintainable and understandable, and also it's less verbose than using the traditional ngFor structural directive, and also you don't have to deal with the import and export from the Angular slash common, and also the import in the imports array in your standalone components. Now this is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and also thank you so much for sticking with us to the end of this video. If you have any questions on this art4 control flow syntax, don't hesitate to drop a comment in the comment section. I'll be there to answer it.